I'd like to thank again Dr. Ennebeck and Trustee Rain for their opening remarks. And next, we're going to go ahead and move forward with our keynote speaker. And I'm going to introduce invite Dr. Brian Baya to introduce our keynote speaker to the stage, and then we'll keep rolling. So after our keynote, we're going to have about a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back in this same room and start our plenary sessions.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to introduce Jeff Peters. He's the Southeast Regional Director of WoodWorks, Wood Products Council. As WoodWorks Southeast Regional Director, Jeff provides free technical support to developers and design construction teams working on commercial or multifamily wood buildings. With both structural engineering and construction expertise, he provides assistance and education on topics that range from heights and areas to acoustics, construction management, durability, and local code requirements. It is this breadth of knowledge in a regional context that has enabled Jeff to support some of the most innovative mass timber and light frame projects in the U.S. South. It also makes him a sought-after speaker at AEC and university events, a resource for authorities having jurisdiction, and a participant in initiatives supporting the local advancement of wood building design. So it's with my pleasure again, Jeff Peters.
Thank you, Brian. All right, let me get this going here. All right, we're good. All right.
Why? What an interesting word that is, why. For years, these tiny little humans we call children have tormented us with this very question, why? You see, the wheels in our head start turning, and our answers start off calculated and very thorough. We invest time and energy in coming up with these elaborate responses, but quickly transition to short and abrasive retorts if they continue asking more and more questions. We get tired of hearing them ask the question, why, right? We get aggravated, we get frustrated as one why after another keep on coming until we give up all hope in this endless bombardment of whys. And what do we say? Because I said so, that's why. Don't you find it interesting that over time, a why can start to frustrate you? Why do you think that is? Shouldn't that actually be the driving force behind everything that we do each and every day? What if we actually took the time to understand where that why came from? What if we actually embraced that why? And what if that why actually became the driving force behind the choices and the decisions that we make on our mass timber projects? Let me continue to unpack this for you. So, many times wow, that's pretty sensitive. All right. Many times in life we start with our what, right? So, I want to exercise. I want to eat healthier. I want to clean my office. Or I want to design a mass timber building. Once we define our what, we then can start to define our how. I'm going to start running. I'm going to do all my meal prep on Sunday. I'm going to spend the first 20 minutes of my morning cleaning my office. Or I'm going to speak to a lot of educated professionals and hire an experienced mass timber design and construction team. Now these are all really good things to do, really they are. But sooner or later, things are going to start to get hard, right? You oversleep one morning and you don't go for that run. Your Sunday becomes jam-packed full of activities and you never take the time to do your meal prep. So what do you end up doing? You end up hitting the drive-thru, you supersize it, right? But you get yourself a Diet Coke, because let's just be honest, you don't want to drink your calories, and you really haven't lost this whole hope of eating healthy anyway. Or you get to your office, right, and you check that email you have to answer. And that one email turns into 4 or 5 emails, which turns into 2 or 3 phone calls, you end up on a Zoom meeting, and you never take the time to clean your office, right? Or You get a call from the general contractor, and he tells you, I'm sorry, the mass timber option is just too expensive. And this is exactly the reason our why is so important. Do you understand why we fail with this way of thinking time and time again? It's because we never start with our why. What if we switch things up a little bit? What if instead of starting with our what, we actually started with our why? Then we can allow that we can allow that why to drive our how we're gonna do something and what we're gonna do about that. So here's an example. Why do you want to exercise and be healthier? For some of you, you want to lose weight. For others, it's a health necessity. Or maybe it's simply just because you want to. It was all planned. Or maybe you just want to spend more time outside. My point here is that each and every one of us have a different why, just like each mass timber project has a different why. And it's absolutely critical for each and every one of us to define that why. So here lies the problem. When we start with our what we want to do, instead of why we want to do it, it often is not the really motivating factor of what's driving us, right? And then when we do that, we set ourselves up for failure right out of the gate. We always start with our what. So we'll say something like, I'm gonna start running 3 miles every day. Come on, man. No, you're not. You're not gonna start running 3 miles every day. You absolutely hate running, right? About the only running that you're gonna do is you might run to the grocery store for some ice cream, or you might run through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. That's about all the running you're gonna do. You know that you hate running, but you define it as your what anyway. And then you end up giving up on running, and you never reach your goal of weight loss, right? So that's an example of what not to do. But what if we approached it like this? What if instead of starting with our what, we started with our why? I want to lose some weight. Okay, great. How are we going to do that? I'm going to start running, or I'm going to start exercising. Okay, great. Now, how are you going to go about doing that? And that could be something like maybe I want to start doing yoga or swimming or CrossFit, something that you actually enjoy doing. And then that defines your North Star, and you set yourself up for success right out of the gate. Excuse me. So now you're sitting here thinking, you're like, okay, that's all great, Jeff, but aren't we at like a CLT mass timber conference? What does any of this have to do with mass timber and CLT? And so I would ask you this question. Why is it that some mass timber projects are so successful right from the very beginning, but others die almost instantly at their inception, right? I mean, come on, ladies and gentlemen, we all have access to the same pool of architects, engineers, contractors, and mass timber suppliers. I don't mean to oversimplify this because it really is a difficult subject, but defining a project's why from the very beginning and letting that why drive your design decisions throughout the entire project, well, that gets you to 90% of the way to success right there. So my hope this morning here is to kind of cover a couple of those whys and hopefully help you define your why. For WoodWorks, our why is pretty simple. We're here to break down barriers and help design teams design commercial wood buildings. How do we do that? Well, we're going to provide education and technical support to design teams, contractors, developers all across the country. And what does that look like? Well, we're going to attend project meetings with you. We're going to navigate the building codes. We're going to take you on building tours. We'll provide lunch and learns or an online seminar. And the list kind of goes on. Now, this morning, we're going to have the opportunity to hear from some very distinguished speakers. And let me just tell you guys, we have the dream team of speakers here today. And my hope is that together, we will help you kind of define your why. Excuse me, I need a water. All right. So at WoodWorks, we have the privilege of working with design professionals all across the country on literally hundreds of mass timber projects each and every year. And I'm here to tell you today that your why will drive your design, construction, and supply team selection. The goal here is not to just do business with anyone who has what you need. The goal here is to do business with people who believe in what you believe in, right? Your why should drive design decisions like column placement and MEP layout. The goal here is to design a building that is cost efficient for mass timber, not to design one that is easier because it's similar to the last one that you did, right? Your why should drive the marketing of the building. Your goal here is to let the mass timber be the selling point. It has beautiful aesthetics, it's sustainable, it's environmentally friendly, not just that it's a mass timber building in general.
Excuse me. I apologize. I'm having a rough morning this morning.
That being said, let's think about our why a little bit more. So why are you even here today? What inspired you and motivated you to take time out of your day to come to this conference? Perhaps you're here today as a designer and you love the story behind mass timber, right? It's a natural, renewable material. It's sustainable. It has a lighter carbon footprint. Or perhaps you're here and you had the opportunity to tour a mass timber building and you've absolutely fallen in love with the aesthetics of the building. Or maybe you're a landowner and you're here today trying to figure out exactly why you should be so excited about this mass timber opportunity right here in the Southeast. Later this morning, we're going to have the opportunity to hear from Smartland CEO, Mr. Derek Ratchford. And as landowners, I know some of you are looking for new opportunities to sell your timber. And I would bet that Mr. Ratchford and his team at Smartland would be more than happy to put your fiber to good use. And I'm pretty sure that Smartland has defined their why for having a CLT manufacturing facility right here in the heart of the wood basket. Now, I've talked about a little bit, there's a lot of opportunity for additional economic impact right here in your own backyard. So sticking with our why, how, and what ideas, let me explain to you what opportunities exist for you as designers based on our current building codes. As of today, you can build a residential building that is 5 stories tall, roughly 480,000 square feet. And you can build an office building that is 6 stories tall and roughly 684,000 square feet. Now that's a tremendous opportunity for mass timber right now based on what we can currently do. And so now you ask yourself, you're saying, that's great, Jeff. You're telling me what we can do, but how? How can we go about doing it? Once again, I don't mean to oversimplify this, but you have access to all the same resources that everyone else has had. There are design experts all across the country that have designed and built these buildings. Speak with them. We can help connect you. And we have access, we'll give you access to all of the mass timber resources that WoodWorks has to offer you. So I've talked about what we can currently do under our existing building codes, but what if I told you that we have the opportunity to go even bigger and taller with mass timber? That we have just barely begun to unlock the potential of what mass timber is even capable of achieving. So now you're saying, how on earth are we going to do something like that? And that's through innovation, technology, engineered wood products, and evolution of the building code. We're now able to push the limits of mass timber even taller, reaching building stories that are 9, 12, and 18 stories tall, and soaring to above over 270 feet in height. Now I know you might find this hard to believe, but there are already cities and states all across the country that have already adopted these mass timber tall wood code provisions. And there are design teams that are eager to claim bragging rights to design the tallest timber tower in the world. And maybe that's your why. right? Maybe your why is that I want to design a tall timber building. Now that's no small task, but you have the resources in place to help you do it. All right, so I'm gonna go back to the podium and we're gonna play a quick little game of true or false. I'm gonna put some projects up on the screen. I'm gonna put some cities and states up on the screen. And I'm gonna ask you true or false if you think that there's a direct code path for a tall timber building in these cities or states. And remember, a tall wood building is anything over 6 stories, so 7 stories or higher, okay? We're not gonna take a long time on this because you have a 50-50 shot. You shouldn't need that long to answer the questions, right? All right, so true or false for the first one. Portland, Oregon. And this is pretty much a give me, right? Now wait a minute. Before I keep going on, we've got some mass timber experts in the room already. You guys are not allowed to answer the questions, right? You're just going to give it away for everybody. Jeff, no, you're not allowed to. All right. So Portland, Oregon, absolutely right. That's true. That's carbon 12, 8 stories, 85 feet tall, mixed-use building. All right. How about Miami, Florida? Now I could be tricking you on this one, right? I mean, you're probably thinking, yeah, right. But Miami, Florida, true or false? True? All right. That one is actually false. You currently can't build a tall timber building in Florida, but there is an established code path in Miami-Dade County for cross-laminated timber and CLT. And 2 of our speakers here today, Shauna and Chris Meyer, were absolutely critical in helping the design community get this code path established in Miami-Dade County. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, they would be the ones to talk to. They're really excited to share that information with you today. All right, how about Cleveland, Ohio? True or false? True? There's like mumbling. Come on. You're not the one on stage talking. The least you could do is give me a true or false, right? All right, true. You're right. Intro, Cleveland, Ohio. That's 9 stories, 115 feet tall, 8 timber stories over a single-story concrete podium. All right, what about Boston, Massachusetts? You think Boston has a tall timber building, or true or false? True. Okay, good. Yes, 11 East Lenox, 7 stories, passive house design, 70 foot in height. Pretty exciting there. All right, what about Madison, Mississippi? All right, you don't really think about Mississippi as tall timber, but do you think that's true or false? False? All right, you are correct on that. That is false. There's not a tall timber tower there, but there is a condominium project there at Lost Rabbit. And one of our other speakers here today, Dr. Patricia Layton, she was absolutely critical in helping me convince the developer that they wanted to go that route with mass timber. She actually invited him to come tour their facilities at Clemson, and that was really what flipped the switch for him and was really excited about choosing mass timber as a developer on his project. All right, how about Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right? We know they're really good for cheese up in Wisconsin. But true, okay, everybody kind of knows that one's true, right? That's home to Ascent, right? The tallest timber tower in the world, coming in at 25 stories, 284 feet. Apparently, there's somebody trying to compete with that out of the US, but we'll see. As of right now, Ascent is the tallest timber tower in the world. All right, how about, last one here, how about Birmingham, Alabama? True or false? That's a lot. True? Well, that one's kind of a trick question because technically you can build a tall timber tower in the city of Birmingham right now. It's just that nobody has done it. So pretty exciting news. As of January 1st this year, the city of Birmingham actually adopted the 2021 International Building Code as their base model code, which means you have direct code path for designing a 9, 12, and 18-story building, right? Do you guys even understand the opportunity that you have available to you in this state, right? You have design teams that are completely capable of designing these buildings. You have landowners who have an abundant supply of timber that are happy to sell it, right? You've got a manufacturing facility right here in the state of Alabama that would be happy to produce CLT panels and glulam beams. And you have a direct code path to allow you to do it. So I presented you with what you can do. You now know how you can do it based on the resources and networks that we have available to you. So pretty much at this point, I just have to ask you, you have to come up with a why now, right? So I've got one more question for you. So now maybe these projects were a couple of anomalies, right? Maybe that's like, here they're scattered and peppered out throughout the states, throughout the country. But how many of you, and I'm not going to make you raise your hand, you don't have to raise your hand, it's not, unless you want to, How many of you think that, other than these few projects that I showed, that the majority of the mass timber projects are only happening out in the Pacific Northwest? Right, like I said, you don't have to raise your hand and you can think about that. All right, well, once upon a time, that was the case. But over the last 10 years, we have seen a massive increase of mass timber projects that are happening all across the country. And as of March of this year, there are 384 mass timber projects that are either in design, under construction, or already been built. Those projects have come to fruition because somebody defined their why, right? And so maybe the why for your project is not going to be the same as the why for your project. Maybe you're a developer here today, and the why for your project might be something like to create market distinction and leasing velocity. And that was exactly the case for a developer that I worked with in Florida back in 2018. And let me share this story with you. So I was hosting a lunch seminar, actually on cross-laminated timber. And if you remember what I said at the beginning of the seminar here, is that hosting a seminar in general, that is a what for WoodWorks, meaning what are we going to do to help you design a commercial wood building, right? All right, so about 20 or 30 minutes into the seminar, these two gentlemen show up to the seminar fashionably late. But in their defense, they did find a seat pretty quietly at the back of the room so that they wouldn't disturb anyone. Well, they did a great job in that they weren't a distraction to those who were attending the seminar, but they were a massive distraction to me. And let me explain why. So at that time, I had been with WoodWorks for about 4 years. It's been 8 years for me now, but at that time it was about 4 years. And I had been trying, and I had wanted nothing more than to help someone bring the very first mass timber building to Central Florida. And when those two guys walked in the room, I noticed that they had a set of plans with them. And so from that point forward, that was all I could fixate on during the rest of the seminar. And so the next 60 minutes was like the longest hour of my entire life. But at the conclusion of the seminar, I was able to spend about an hour reviewing the plans, and it became very clear to me that the developer on that project had already defined his why. So the owner reps, when I was talking with them, they actually told me that the developer had several friends in the construction industry, and one of them just so happened to be the owner of a precast company. And that gentleman offered to supply all of the precast panels for this project at cost. Do you see how quickly that mass timber project could have died almost instantly had the developer not defined his why, right? Excuse me. Even with that kind of deal, the developer was committed to a mass timber building from the very beginning. And no matter what he was presented with, the developer had defined his why, and he let that become his driving force throughout the entire project. Now, this project seemed like a slam dunk from the very beginning, right? But let me explain to you how this project could have taken a turn for the worse very quickly had he not found an architect, an engineer, and a contractor who was like-minded like he was and actually bought into this idea of his why. So about 2 or 3 weeks go by, and I have a call with the developer. He introduces himself to me. He tells me a little bit about the project. He says, I'm looking to design about a 3-story building, about 30,000 square feet of Class A office space. He asks me some general questions. I tell him a little bit about what WoodWorks does, and we jump right in. And during the conversation, I say to him, okay, I know that your reps, they brought me some schematic plans to the lunch seminar a couple weeks ago, but let's talk about getting you set up with a mass timber architect, somebody who actually understands mass timber. And he stops me like almost instantly, and he's like, whoa, Jeff, slow down. We already have an architect for the project. We are good to go. Now, remember, I'm in Florida, and I hear news like this, and I'm like, awesome. This is fantastic. Did you guys hire a firm from the Pacific Northwest? Like, these guys, they have a ton of experience in mass timber. And I kid you not, his response to me is, Nope, he's not from the Pacific Northwest. He's actually a local guy. And oh, by the way, he's never designed a mass timber building before either. But we want to bring him along on this journey. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I can work with that, right? Remember, at the beginning of the presentation, I defined my why, right? We're here to break down barriers and help you design a commercial wood building. Do you see how this little bit of information that the developer shared with me could have completely derailed my efforts to support him on this project had I not defined my why? So my why has been defined, right? Now the question becomes how? How am I going to serve his architect on this project? Well, we're going to provide him with education and technical resources and design assistance. And so what does that look like? We're going to talk to him about construction type. We're going to talk to him about fire resistance ratings and acoustical assemblies. But most important, I'm going to give him access to the entire library of mass timber resources that WoodWorks has to offer. So now, the developer has just told me that we have an architect on board. And so now I've got to ask the next question, right? So I say to him, okay, well, what about an engineer? Do you have an engineer on board? And his response, yes, we have an engineer on board. And I'm like, sweet, right? Because at this time, right, it was really hard to find a mass timber engineer, especially in the state of Florida. Now, given his response to my last question about his architect, I was a little bit apprehensive to ask this next question. But I'm all in at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyway. So, does your engineer, does he have any experience in designing a mass timber building? His answer, nope. But he's a really great guy, and he's a local guy too. And we want to bring him along on this journey as well. All right, don't panic, right? It's okay. It's okay, I defined my why, right? I'm helping you break down barriers and design a commercial wood building. And how am I going to serve his engineer on this project? Well, same kind of similar scenario here. I'm going to provide him education, technical support, and design assistance. And what does that look like? Well, we're going to have conversations about structural grid, material properties, lateral systems, and we're also going to give him access to the entire library of mass timber resources that WoodWorks has available as well. All right, now, this leads me to my final question for the developer. Do you have a general contractor on board? Please say no. Please say no. Yes! We have a general contractor on board. Now, I was pretty sure that I knew that that was going to be the answer to my question. And I'm also pretty positive at this point, I know the answer to the follow-up question that I'm about to ask him, right? Okay, so does your general contractor have any experience with pricing or building a mass timber building? His answer, nope. But they're a really great new group of local guys, and they're eager to learn. So do you even understand the magnitude? I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit here. So let me be fully transparent. At this time, WoodWorks didn't really have a very big library of resources available for general contractors. But this opportunity, as well as some others, really helped us establish and define a new why for the general contracting community. Now when we're approached with this kind of scenario, we're here to increase, and we're here to lower the general contractor's risk, right? And increase their knowledge and expertise on mass timber. Well, how are we going to do that? We're going to do that through education and training opportunities. So that's a little bit different than what we've been doing for the architects and the engineers. And what does that look like? Well, we now have something called the WoodWorks Innovation Network, or WIN, which is an online community of mass timber experts all across the country. We have our mass timber construction training program. We have mass timber installation training facilities all across the country. And we have the mass timber construction manual. Now, the intent of this manual is to not teach contractors how to build. We know they already know how to build. But the intent is to teach them what is different about mass timber. Now, the magnitude of what has happened for this project, we have a developer who's never developed a mass timber building before. We have an architect and an engineer who's never designed a mass timber building before. And we have a general contractor who's never built a mass timber building before. And oh, by the way, the developer did this in the middle of hurricane season in Florida. When I tell you that this project was faced with adversity, that's an understatement. But this project was a success because all parties bought into the idea of mass timber from the very beginning. And they understood the owners, developers, why. Most importantly, the developer, he never lost sight of his why. Remember, he wanted to create market distinction and leasing velocity. Do you know that the structural shell for his building was completed in December of 2019? Adversity, right? Just 3 months prior to the start of the pandemic. Then in mid-July, he had a ribbon cutting ceremony of 2020. And the most amazing thing happened. In the middle of a worldwide pandemic, when everyone had become pretty comfortable working from home, he was actually able to lease out his entire 30,000 square foot building in just under a year. As my time comes to an end here with you today, I'd like to challenge you, not only to define your why, but never lose sight of it. Work with like-minded professionals who believe in what you believe in. I presented you today with what you can do with mass timber. You now know how you can do it based on the resources that you have available to you. So once again, I would ask you, what's your why? Thank you so much for your time today, and I hope you have an outstanding conference.